Ever wonder why your 75-year-old grandmother always gets that special pat down at security while younger passengers breeze through? Think airlines treat all passengers equally regardless of age? Wrong. Airlines have been operating under a hidden two-tier system for decades, and older passengers are paying the price in ways you never imagined. Today, we're exposing 12 shocking secrets about how airlines really treat older passengers. Let's go. Introduction. Your elderly parents book that dream vacation, excited to finally travel after retirement. They arrive at the airport early, just like they were told. But from the moment they step into the terminal, they're entering a system designed to extract more money from them while providing less service. Airlines have spent decades perfecting these tactics, and the evidence is overwhelming. The Transportation Security Administration has special screening procedures for passengers over 75. Sounds helpful, right? Think again. While airlines promote this as accommodation, industry insiders reveal it's actually a way to funnel older passengers into longer security lines. These passengers experience significant delays if they have wearable medical devices or medical equipment, which must get checked separately. Airlines know older passengers are more likely to have medical devices, creating built-in delays that cost them time and stress. But the discrimination goes deeper. TSA officials at all 4 airports investigated by the Government Accountability Office admitted that their advanced imaging technology and other practices result in certain passengers being referred for additional screening more frequently than others. These include older passengers with medical devices, wheelchairs, or mobility aids. The system is designed to flag them as potential security risks simply because of their age-related needs. Flight attendants I've spoken with admit they receive completely different training when dealing with older passengers. Airline personnel who deal with the traveling public must be trained to be aware of passengers with disabilities needs. But behind closed doors, crew members are taught to identify high-maintenance passengers, and age is a primary factor. Former crew members reveal they're given specific protocols for handling older passengers that prioritize speed over service. Training materials obtained through insider sources show airlines teach crew members psychological techniques to make older passengers feel burdensome. They're instructed to use phrases like "airline policy prevents us" and, for safety reasons, to shut down requests for basic assistance. One former United Airlines flight attendant revealed that crew members receive bonuses for keeping service interactions under specific time limits, creating financial incentives to rush older passengers. Research from the Population Research Bureau reveals something stunning about the airline workforce itself. In 1980, about 80% of U.S. flight attendants were under the age of 35. According to the report's latest available figures, by 2007, the number of these youngsters had dropped to only about 20%, while the numbers of older cabin crew members soared. By 2007, half of all flight attendants were age 45 and older, and nearly 22% were 55 and older. But older flight attendants face their own discrimination. United Airlines was forced to pay 2 veteran flight attendants more than $2 million in compensation after a federal appeals court agreed with a jury finding that the airline had fired the long-serving flight attendants based on their age. The flight attendants, Jeannie Strope and Reuben Lee, were accused of minor infractions that younger crew members regularly committed without facing termination. The court found there was sufficient evidence for the jury to reasonably determine that United's stated reasons for disciplining the plaintiffs were a pretext for unlawful age discrimination. Airlines use sophisticated psychological tactics specifically targeting older passengers. They offer senior-friendly services that sound helpful but actually segregate older travelers into different processes that cost more and provide less flexibility. Alternative airlines market special assistance for senior travelers, but former employees reveal these services often come with hidden restrictions that limit where passengers can sit, when they can board, and what assistance they can receive during the flight. The airline industry has created an entire infrastructure around making older passengers feel dependent and grateful for basic service. They've studied psychology research showing that seniors are less likely to complain about poor treatment if they feel grateful for any assistance at all. This research directly informs training programs that teach staff to offer minimal help while making passengers feel like they should be thankful for basic human decency. The seating game is systematically rigged against older passengers. Airlines have conducted extensive market research showing that seniors usually prefer to sit near the front of an airplane, where it's easier to access the bathroom, and they want seats with extra leg room as well as early boarding opportunities. Armed with this knowledge, airlines have strategically placed premium pricing on exactly these seats that older passengers need most for their comfort and health. But the manipulation goes beyond pricing. Airlines use computer algorithms to analyze booking patterns and automatically identify older passengers based on factors like medical equipment requests, wheelchair assistance needs, and seat preferences. These passengers are then classified as high-cost customers in internal systems, influencing everything from gate assignments to crew interactions before they even arrive at the airport. Wheelchair assistance represents one of the most deceptive practices in the industry. Airlines are legally required to provide assistance to passengers with disabilities as they navigate through different portions of the airport, and this service is supposed to be free under the Air Carrier Access Act. However, the reality is far more complex and costly than passengers realize. Some international carriers openly charge fees for wheelchair assistance. AirAsia, a low-cost carrier, charges fees for wheelchair service unless passengers provide their own wheelchair, with costs reaching $20 per airport. But even airlines that claim to provide free wheelchair service have found ways to monetize the process. They've partnered with airport service companies that accept tips that are really mandatory fees disguised as voluntary gratuities. Former airport wheelchair attendants reveal they're instructed to mention costs and suggest payment amounts during service. Passengers feel pressured to pay these tips because they depend on the service and don't want to be labeled as difficult customers. Airlines profit from these arrangements through revenue-sharing agreements with the service companies. Flight attendants are specifically trained to treat older passengers differently during medical emergencies, and the protocols prioritize airline liability over passenger welfare. While crew members are required to provide assistance, internal guidelines specify that staff should give senior travelers only the minimum assistance legally required. They are explicitly instructed not to focus extensively on elderly passengers because they must meet the needs of a plane full of people. This means older passengers experiencing medical issues receive less attention and care than they might need, even when flight attendants have the training and time to provide more help. Former crew members describe situations where they were discouraged from spending too much time helping older passengers with basic needs like reaching overhead compartments, accessing medications, or getting to the bathroom. The boarding process has been weaponized to create hidden discrimination against older passengers. Airlines offer early boarding for those needing assistance, which sounds accommodating, but crew members admit this actually marks passengers as problematic in their computer systems. When customers request early boarding for special assistance, airlines track these requests and may limit future accommodations or classify passengers as high-maintenance travelers. Internal airline documents obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests show that airlines maintain detailed databases tracking passenger assistance requests. Passengers who request wheelchair service, early boarding, or other accommodations are flagged in systems that influence future booking options, seat assignments, and service levels. Some passengers have reported being mysteriously unable to book certain flights or finding their seat selection options limited after requesting assistance. The industry's Golden Candidates recruitment program reveals the cynical calculation behind airline age policies. Airlines now actively seek golden candidates, prospective flight attendants age 40 and older with life experience that will make them better at their jobs. But industry insiders reveal this isn't about valuing older workers. It's because airlines recognize they need older employees to manage the increasing number of older passengers they're systematically failing to serve properly. This program exists because airlines have data showing that older passengers file fewer complaints and accept poorer service when assisted by older crew members. They've weaponized generational empathy to reduce service costs while maintaining the appearance of accommodation. Age discrimination lawsuits have revealed systematic problems throughout the aviation industry. The U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission's first complainants were female flight attendants complaining of age discrimination, weight requirements, and bans on marriage. Originally, female flight attendants were required to be single upon hiring and were fired if they got married, exceeded weight regulations, or reached age 32 or 35 depending on the airline. While these explicit policies were eliminated, the underlying institutional bias persists. Court documents from discrimination cases reveal that airlines continue to use age as a factor in employment decisions, and this ageist culture extends to how they treat older passengers. When an industry systematically discriminates against older employees, it creates a workplace culture where age bias against customers becomes normalized and institutionalized. Airlines have turned older passengers' medical needs into sophisticated profit centers. Every medical device creates additional paperwork, potential delays, and opportunities for fees. Wheelchair batteries are considered dangerous goods and restrictions apply, requiring special handling procedures that airlines use to justify additional charges and delays. Airlines have partnered with medical equipment companies to create rental programs that charge passengers for equipment they should provide for free. Portable oxygen concentrators, mobility aids, and other medical devices become revenue streams through these partnerships. Passengers who need medical equipment often find themselves paying hundreds of dollars in rental fees for equipment that costs airlines a fraction of that amount. The complaint system has been deliberately designed to be confusing and intimidating for older passengers. Research shows that passengers are often completely unaware of how to file discrimination complaints, and airlines count on this ignorance. The complaint process involves multiple agencies, complex paperwork, and intimidating legal language that discourages older passengers from pursuing their rights. Airlines have lobbied extensively to keep the complaint process complicated and ineffective. They've successfully argued that simplifying the process would lead to frivolous complaints and increased costs. Internal communications show airlines discussing strategies to discourage complaints by making the process as difficult and time-consuming as possible. International airlines operating in the United States exploit legal loopholes to discriminate against older passengers in ways U.S. carriers can't legally implement. Some Middle Eastern and Asian carriers openly favor younger passengers and crew members, often limiting hiring to candidates below 30 years old. When these airlines operate routes to and from the United States, they bring these discriminatory practices with them. Code share agreements create additional loopholes that allow foreign airlines to discriminate against older American passengers even on domestic routes. Since the foreign carrier is technically providing the service, they claim exemption from U.S. anti-discrimination laws. Passengers booking what they think is a domestic flight may find themselves subject to foreign airline policies that don't recognize their rights under American disability and age discrimination laws. The most shocking revelation came from documented incidents of outright hostility toward older passengers seeking basic assistance. A United Airlines flight attendant called security on an elderly disabled first-class passenger who simply asked for help stowing her cane and small purse. When the passenger requested assistance she was legally entitled to receive, the flight attendant claimed union regulations prevented her from helping and called security to remove the passenger from the plane. This incident isn't isolated. Flight crews regularly refuse to stow adaptive equipment such as walkers and folding wheelchairs in the aircraft cabin, despite being legally required to provide this assistance. Travelers with disabilities who are accompanied by able-bodied companions find that airline personnel consistently direct questions and instructions to their travel partners rather than address them directly, treating them as incompetent or invisible. Airlines deliberately understaff flights and gates to create time pressure that works against older passengers who need more assistance. This understaffing is a calculated business decision designed to make older passengers feel burdensome and guilty for requesting help they're legally entitled to receive. Former gate agents describe being given impossible passenger-to-staff ratios during shifts with high numbers of older travelers. The psychological impact of this treatment is intentional. Airlines want older passengers to feel like burdens, so they'll either pay for premium services to avoid discrimination or simply travel less frequently. If some flight attendants seem impatient or unhelpful with older passengers, consider that their median hourly wages dropped by 26% between 1980 and 2007, while median wages for all U.S. workers rose by 13%. This creates a cycle where stressed, underpaid crew members take their frustrations out on the most vulnerable passengers. Airlines conduct extensive psychological research on older passenger behavior, and they've identified that seniors are more likely to blame themselves for service problems rather than the airline. This research directly informs policies designed to shift responsibility for poor service onto passengers themselves. Training materials teach crew members to use phrases that make passengers feel like problems are their fault rather than system failures. Data analytics programs now profile older passengers before they even book flights. Airlines track browsing patterns, booking histories, and demographic information to identify older customers and automatically adjust pricing and availability. Older passengers may see higher prices for the same flights or find certain seats and services unavailable even when younger customers booking identical trips have full access. The most disturbing trend is the emergence of age surcharges disguised as service fees. Airlines have discovered dozens of ways to charge older passengers more for identical services by bundling necessary accommodations with optional extras. A window seat near the bathroom becomes a premium location with extra fees. Early boarding becomes a convenience service with additional charges. Basic assistance becomes concierge service at premium prices. These practices generate billions in additional revenue from older passengers who have no choice but to pay extra fees for accommodations they need for health and mobility reasons. Airlines have essentially created a two-tier system where older passengers subsidize cheaper fares for younger travelers who don't need these accommodations. The Federal Aviation Administration has documented thousands of complaints about age discrimination, but enforcement remains virtually non-existent. Airlines face minimal penalties for violating older passengers' rights, and the complaint process is so complex that most incidents go unreported. The few cases that do result in penalties involve fines that represent tiny fractions of airline revenues, making discrimination a profitable business strategy rather than a legal risk. Training programs at major airlines now include specific modules on identifying older passengers who might complain too much about service issues. These passengers are flagged in computer systems and may receive reduced service on future flights. The industry has essentially created a secret blacklist for older passengers who advocate for their rights, turning self-advocacy into a reason for retaliation. Conclusion. So, there you have it. 12 shocking ways airlines systematically discriminate against older passengers. From rigged security processes and psychological manipulation to hidden fees and secret passenger profiling, the aviation industry has turned aging into a sophisticated profit center. Airlines don't want you knowing these tactics because their entire business model depends on older passengers accepting poor treatment as normal while paying premium prices for basic human dignity. But knowledge is power. The airline industry has spent decades perfecting these discriminatory practices because they depend on older passengers not understanding their rights or recognizing when they're being exploited. Every time an older passenger accepts substandard service without complaint, it reinforces a system designed to extract maximum profit from their vulnerability. Which revelation shocked you most? The secret passenger profiling systems, the crew training to identify difficult older passengers, or the deliberate understaffing to create time pressure? Share your experiences in the comments because your stories might help other travelers recognize when they're being discriminated against and fight back effectively. The airline industry hopes you'll never discover how extensively they've monetized aging and disability. We're just getting started exposing how major industries exploit vulnerable populations for profit. Subscribe for more investigations that reveal what corporations spend millions trying to hide from you.